folks. This is your host, Dr. Graham Taylor. I'm so excited to tell you about the upcoming Triad Mental Health Summit Week, taking place online August 20th through the 22nd. This 3-day event is free to attend and will cover different themes each day: positive change and equality on the 20th, simplifying the pathway to licensure on the 21st, and elevating therapeutic skills on the 22nd. Join us for one day or all three to gain valuable insights and practical knowledge that will help you in your professional growth. Both Charlene Dixon and I will be hosting live interviews, and we'll even have time at the end to field questions from our audience. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity. Learn more and register today at triadhq.com/TMHS. We look forward to having you there.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a Triad production. I'm your host, Dr. Graham Taylor. Today's show is part of our Clinicians series, and I love these shows because we get to take you into the therapeutic work itself, allowing you to get a sense of and an appreciation for what actually occurs within the therapy session, along with understanding of the various techniques and therapeutic strategies and the constructs that take place between the therapist and the patient. Ideally, this series allows you to kind of demystify the therapeutic process and provide you with an understanding of how life-changing psychotherapy can really be. I'm not only excited about this show being a part of our Clinicians series, but I'm so happy to have a return guest. Tanya Cole-Lesnick joined us in a prior show where we focused on clearing energetic clutter and the transformative power of group work. Tanya is a psychotherapist turned transformational coach whose journey from personal struggle to professional fulfillment fuels her mission to empower others. Tanya's path began in her mid-20s when she sought therapy to navigate a love life challenge, initially grappling with shame and vulnerability. Embracing group therapy led to a profound insight, culminating in both professional growth and a career shift from graphic design to social work. With nearly 3 decades of experience, she facilitates emotional growth through therapeutic groups and innovative coaching techniques. Her Activate coaching program empowers individuals to clear obstacles and build lives aligned with their deepest aspirations. Beyond coaching, Tanya offers life-changing retreats, inviting women to rediscover play, creativity, and connection. Today's Clinician series focuses on group therapy and a deep dive into support dynamics. Tanya, nice to have you back. Thanks for being here.
So great to be back with you, Graham. I'm excited to get into it again. We had a
All
great
right.
first chat.
Nice to have you. Well, in our last show, you defined for us energetic clutter and how it impedes growth. And you helped us understand the ways that we can identify the clutter in our lives, as well as a brief overview of some of the techniques and strategies that go into your unique and very effective healing model of therapy. But as we start off today, let's just do a little quick refresher of what is energetic clutter and its impact and its cost to our lives.
Yeah. So, energetic clutter is really just a term that I came up with literally when I was cleaning out my kitchen cabinets, but it helped me really connect to the idea of the work that I've done for 30 years now, helping people identify what's in the way, what's not serving them anymore, and what do they really want to be focusing on. So, what the quickest definition that I've come up with for energetic clutter is these are things that demand our time, our focus, and attention, but they don't help us move the needle towards growth or meaning or how we want to feel. And most of it is a combination between limiting beliefs that we all have taken with us from our childhoods, from the families that we grew up in, and the cultures that we grew up in, and paired with the behaviors that go along with that. So it could be something like, I'm only lovable if I tell somebody yes, if I'm accommodating to them.
Mm.
Otherwise, people will abandon me. So that's the belief, the limiting belief. And then the behaviors that go along with that are people-pleasing behaviors. Let me just be accommodating. Let me put myself on the back burner. So that's just an example of one, but it's that kind of thing that can take up so much energy from
Mm.
us. And if we've got a lot of limiting beliefs that are running the show for us, we can be so exhausted and depleted that by the time we want to know what matters to us or start to focus on something that matters to us, if we're lucky enough to even know what that is, we can be just too depleted by then that we can't even get to it.
Yeah. I think it's a great reminder of that definition. And what you're just suggesting here is that while these things happen, whether it's cultural influences or our family of origin influences, these things happen at an unconscious level. We're
Yeah.
developing these things along the way. And the way you're putting it so nicely is that at their very best, some of these compensatory strategies, maybe I don't share my needs. Maybe I take care of
Mhm.
yours in order to keep our relationship intact.
Mhm.
They're all in the service of something very, very important. And we don't recognize that we're doing it. But at some point in our lives, they become inhibitive of
Mhm.
us living a full, free, and healthy life. And they become kind of clutter, don't they?
For sure. Yeah, they take up a lot of space. They take up a lot of our life energy.
Yeah, they really do. I love the idea of therapy and being able to address these things, but you've been working in group therapy now in some really, really fun and cool ways. What have you found being so unique about
Mm.
group work in a healing process versus individual therapy, which is good too, but what is unique about
Yeah.
group work have you found?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean, there are a lot of different things that I find very powerful about group work. One is that just knowing you're not alone. I think so
Yeah.
often we can be hard on ourselves and think that somehow everybody else has gotten it figured out and we haven't. And
Mhm.
so group helps people understand that, oh, we're kind of all navigating this tricky territory of being human. And when we see other people that we can admire, that we could see as people who are very accomplished, still struggling with their own insecurities, it just helps take the edge off of what we may see with our own behavior, some of the inner critic stuff we might say to ourselves. So there's that. Another thing that I think is really powerful about group work is connecting to ourselves through it. So, as we're talking about our own journeys and we hear other people talking about their journeys, their personal growth journeys, their life journeys, there are things that are going to resonate with us that we didn't necessarily anticipate. When you go into individual therapy or coaching, you'll come with some agenda. And of course, the person that you're working with will have some questions that help you clarify some things, understand some things, touch on some things. But in group, there is a real resonance that can happen as you see yourself in somebody else's journey, which is
Mm.
different and special.
It's nice, isn't it? In some ways, as you described the concepts of you're really defining them nicely, universality and the idea of kind of normalization.
Mhm.
Some of the things we're going through, we think we're kind of weird, or maybe it's only
Mhm.
us,
That's
going
right.
through it, and maybe I'm so different, and I dare not share these things out of shame or embarrassment. When we when we listen to other people's stories, we go, "Wait a minute, that's kind of my parts of my story in there. So
Mhm.
maybe I'm not alone, and maybe I'm not so different or weird." And it kind of
That's right.
makes us kind of feel a bit more accepting, doesn't it?
Totally. Which is it's funny because getting people to sort of understand that group is gonna be helpful.
Right.
And that it's worth adding that into somebody's personal growth journey. At first, I often get a lot of resistance because
Yeah.
there is that fear like, oh, I can't go share my story with these strangers. I mean, I can do it with you, this person who's sort of hired to support me, but these strangers, what are they going to say? They might see me as flawed and I don't know if I want to go there. So there's a lot of resistance I think and fear at first because
Mm.
I think people don't anticipate that they're going to feel so seen and understood.
It's really a safe place, isn't it, for vulnerability? It's almost kind of paradoxical. I'm going to go into a group and I'm going to share myself, and you're encouraging me to trust that it's safe so that I can be vulnerable.
Mhm.
And and it's you want me to do what? And
Mhm.
the answer is just to try it, just to
Yeah.
see. I want to do something. I'd love to just jump right in. As part of our
Mhm.
clinical series here, let's jump into kind of how you do your group. So let's let our listeners have a sense of what they would experience if they were to walk into and be a part of your group. Show this as typical size and
Mhm.
the ways that you welcome folks in, and walk us through the experience that they're going to have.
Yeah, yeah. Well, all my groups right now are virtual. That was not always the case, but I've just continued with them being virtual because I love the freedom to work with anybody in any part of the world. So when people join, usually there's a lot of conversations that have happened first where I help people understand, similar to what you and I just talked about. What are some of the benefits? Why would somebody even consider group, and what would
Mhm.
that be? Why would they take that step? So that's already happened. And then they come into group. When somebody new comes in, so the way I run them is not a cohort group. The
Yeah.
groups are ongoing and
Oh,
people
yeah.
join or leave depending on their own personal growth journeys. So
So it's
when
an
they're
open group.
Yes, so
Okay.
it's an open group. I love a small group. I've done groups as small as even 2 people to get started if some people are their schedules line up and they both want group and it feels like they're a good fit. I would have 2 people start a group, and then as that grows, then it can be a nice little seed for us to start with. And then I don't like to do groups bigger than 10 really. I feel
Okay.
like once they're 10 is like a nice, still intimate size where we can talk about what's going on with each individual. I see the groups as an opportunity for people to get to know them and to be seen. And so for them to be small enough to have that opportunity is really important. And so when somebody's coming in, it's going to be with other people who have been there already, unless it's a brand new group that I'm starting, in which case, the seed of whoever's in there will talk a little bit about why group. What have their experiences been with group so far? What are they hoping to get out of the group? So that's on the occasions when somebody will be starting a group together. But when somebody comes into a group that already exists, I lean on my people that have been there for a while who kind of know the drill. They know what we do to really show them how do we share
Mm.
with each other. What does that look like? And so I introduce people and then I ask people just to say a little bit about what have their experiences been with groups so far? What are some of the things they've been working on? And we start with that. And I always have the new person go last so they have a chance to hear from people who have been in the group already. And usually the topic of the first group is welcoming the new
Mhm.
person and kind of reassessing what are some of the goals? What have you been working on? What have some of the wins that you've had along the way? And what are you looking ahead towards? And so everybody shares that, including the new person may share whether or not they've ever been part of a group before and what they're hoping to get out of the group. Often they may say something like, "Yeah, Tanya keeps talking to me about coming into this group, so I finally just decided to give it a try."
Sure.
So that's usually where we start. Yeah.
What does that first session tend to be like? How does it, it sounds very warm, sounds very inviting, and it sounds like your group members are very welcoming folks of someone new into the fold here
Mhm. Mhm.
by being very transparent themselves first. So really modeling
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
been going on and showing them that it's safe to be this,
Mhm.
looking for vulnerability and safety. What that tend to be like?
Yeah, all of that, I think I also have a tendency to share myself as I work with clients, whether it's group or individually. I will talk about some of my own learning along the way. And often when somebody's coming into group, I will also share how group therapy had been something that changed my life and my
Mhm.
career. And so knowing that story, kind of coming into it, and it is just part of the culture that gets developed over time so that when there's people who have been in that sort of experience with me for a bit, there's ease with that. There's a lot of
Mhm.
comfort. People kind of just they know that's what we do, and there's real love that has developed over time with each other, and so the people that are in there have connection with each other,
Mm.
and there really is a lot of warmth, and
I would
that's
imagine.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll be right back after word from our sponsor.
Most of us spend more time at work than anywhere else doing anything else. So why not spend that time in a job you love? Introducing Triad's Jobs Marketplace, the only job site dedicated specifically to behavioral and mental health professionals. Featuring more than 1,000 open jobs from dozens of behavioral and mental health employers, and searchable by location, professional field, employment type, specialization, and more. Jobs Marketplace helps you find your next career opportunity. Full-time, part-time, or gig time, make the most of your time. To access Jobs Marketplace, register for your free professional account at hellotriad.com/BHT. That's hellotriad.com/BHT, and then click to Jobs Marketplace. If you're already a member of the Triad community, visit app.hellotriad.com/jobs. That's app.hellotriad.com/jobs. Visit us today and take your next career step tomorrow.
So I'm the new member. I got welcomed last week, let's say.
Yeah.
Had a really nice time, good enough to come back this week, and
Mhm,
felt
mhm,
accepted, and I felt I could trust this, and it felt very warm and welcoming, and felt empathic and genuine as you folks
mm.
kind of welcomed me in. It's my second week. Where do we start tonight, and what happens?
Mhm. Yeah. I actually run my groups every other week.
Okay.
And so on the off week, what I offer is a topic for people to think about. So when
Mm,
somebody's new, like I said, we'll focus on the welcoming. But
mhm,
then once the person has been officially welcomed in, and that can be more, it doesn't have to end, but it's in terms of focus and topic, it's very specifically what I shared with you. But then I start to offer topics in between. So something like, well, the one that I'm offering for my group, for my next group is, what does your best life look like? What's your vision of that? And for them to share that with each other, and then we'll explore how close to your best life do you feel you are? What's not part of your best life vision that is happening in your life now, that kind of thing. So I'll just send out an email with the topic so that people have about a week to think about the topic. They can write about it if they want. That can be a real thorough way to process it, or they can just think about it. But
mhm,
having a week to kind of mull over it is helpful. So then we get into the group. We usually start with a little bit of a catch up. How's it going? With a new person, it might be something like, how was the first group for you? That kind of thing. So we can process that a little bit. And as we get to know each other and the journeys that each person is on, that's part of the check in. And then we get into the topic. And what I have found is, without the check in, we're not addressing what's happening in real time for people in their lives. And without the topic, we're not necessarily going as deeply as we do when we have a topic that we're exploring together. So
mm,
the combination is really powerful to have both of those things at once in the plan of the structure for the group. And I usually will pick people, just especially in the Zoom. It's a little bit harder, I
mhm.
find, than in person, for people to know who's going to start us
Start
off,
us
that
out,
kind of
right.
thing. And so I will often say, oh, go around on who I see on my screen and start with somebody. And with new people, I often have them listen a bit and go closer to the end, because I think it just helps
Mhm,
them understand how to navigate that. So, and one of the questions that I love that I always ask is, as they hear each other share, I want them to comment about what's resonating for each of them as they
mhm.
hear the others share, because it's in that overlap that I think there's such connection to other humans, and really we can see each other and see how we fit in. And that is an important part of the conversation.
Give me a sense of some of the other topics that you might have laid out that
Yeah.
are kind of primers for the upcoming session.
Yeah. So the last session, I asked people to spend the time between when I sent the topic and the group to look for. moments of everyday joy. Where do they find joy in their everyday lives? That, and also, what do they notice as they're being intentional of looking for joy? What are they noticing about their own day to day experience? Does anything shift with that? So that's
Mm.
another one. I've talked to them about energy, what feels energizing to them, what feels depleting to them. We've talked about self-care. We sometimes will listen to a podcast together
Mhm.
and we'll talk about what some of the reactions have been. We'll talk about limiting beliefs.
So
Yeah.
you're giving folks kind of as I mentioned, kind of a primer, knowing that these types of things naturally take us to places that we probably need to go that
Mhm.
are part of our own life. And ideally, you it sounds like you're trying to take it from just kind of a head level or a cognitive level down to maybe more an experiential, even emotional processing of this. Walk me through that piece of it right there. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think self-care is a good thing.
Mhm.
Okay. But you're looking
Mhm.
to kind of deepen that. Walk
Yeah.
me through that piece of it.
Yeah. So if it was self-care, one of the things that I've said is, what have you done for self-care specifically between now and the next time we meet? And so it takes it into a very real life. What are they each kind of using in their life? Where do they get stuck with it? What helps? Are they feeling grounded from the self-care? Are they
Mhm.
feeling that they're getting the impact that they're
So someone
wanting?
says to you, I'm just, I'd love to have
Yeah.
done it, guys. I'm sorry, but I got too busy. And
Yeah.
where would you take that?
Yeah, I probably would explore with them about what do they think got in the way from it,
Uh,
and what is the role of self-care in their lives overall. I mean, some of which we kind of already know because we've these topics that I'm bringing, we touch on them probably most weeks. We probably have some reference to self-care most weeks. So we kind of explore it. I had somebody, one week with a podcast. I asked them to listen to a podcast, and then one of the people never got to it, which is fine. Like, I don't want ever anybody
yeah.
to feel like somehow they're not going to get value from the group if they weren't doing their homework. It's just all part of it. And understanding too, how do they come back and focus on themselves if maybe they have 3 kids in the other room, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. And so
Yeah.
helping people understand how to prioritize themselves. I ask people for their own suggestions. So if there's ever anything, because it's really a collaborative group experience. So if there's ever a topic that anybody is interested in exploring, I welcome that. So we've done things like read a book together because somebody was reading the James Clear Atomic Habits book
Oh,
was
yeah.
one that somebody was reading, and they thought it might be interesting for us all to talk about it. And so we agreed it was part of like, are people interested and willing to do that kind of thing? And if they are, we can do it together. Another person brought in the topic of feeling that her anger gets triggered sometimes when she's overwhelmed and she wants a better understanding of that. And so the topic that week was to track it.
Mm.
When are you finding yourself getting overwhelmed and maybe speaking with more anger than you're comfortable with? I think in that time, I just said triggered with anything, and then we
Right.
would talk about it. So that's what people tracked it, and then we kind of tried to count backwards and look at what might be a limiting belief underneath this that is impacting the anger. And so we peel away lots of different layers.
I was thinking the very same thing. It sounds like these are places just to start going back to your energetic clutter here, those limiting beliefs and behaviors that follow.
Mhm.
And more times than not, they're often, well, they're unconscious.
Mhm.
And so part of what therapy gets to do, we get to make the unconscious conscious. Why do I do
That's right.
that? Or why is that my response all the time? I never even realized that I did that.
That's right.
And we're talking about, well, I just got too busy. Well, maybe
Yeah.
I get busy because my language of love is works, and that's how I get value. And
That's
maybe I
right.
begin to kind of deepen my understanding of that in ways that I never saw before. But then I have a very small place in my own life. So
Yeah.
these are ways just to kind of go down to what those limiting beliefs may be, the behaviors that can follow, whether it's Why aren't you living your best life? Or
That's right.
what's so hard about that self-care? Those are just starter places, aren't they?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I think I often tell people we learn just as much from what they don't do as we do from what they do. So there's no should anywhere. We just want to keep paying attention and learning and growing and sort of allowing that experience to continue to help us grow and move forward and be more intentional about how we want to live our lives.
What are some of the common challenges that you find? These are great topics as kind of springboards into deeper conversation and also self-awareness. What are some of the common challenges that you see, maybe areas of resistance that come up, and how do you address those?
Yeah. Yeah, I think often it's some of these patterns that have a real hold on people's lives. So, somebody might really want to stop losing their temper or not drink anymore or something like that. And they go back into their lives, and life it feels very chaotic. And making whatever choice they talked about during the group feels too hard to actually shift. And so I think that I mean, sometimes it takes people hitting whatever their bottom is. And I don't mean a full on, if somebody's struggling with substances, that kind of bottom necessarily. But sometimes when people hear themselves say the same thing over, they get
Mhm.
frustrated and they're like, all
Right.
right, I'm tired of saying this again.
Tired of being
And
tired.
yeah, and there's a real power to it being in front of group people. Like they might be a little bit more lenient with themselves if they've said it to a therapist or a coach. But in front of other people in the group, I think they feel a little bit more impatient with themselves about hearing themselves repeat that they're still struggling with a certain pattern.
Yeah.
So,
Really
yeah.
good. I would imagine that, hearing other people share it and watching themselves, kind of share. I mean, with, the repetition compulsion is about, we tend to repeat those patterns of behavior
Mhm.
that are just unconscious, hoping to put a different ending on them. And then
Right.
as we're talking about our tendency to do that, we're recognizing that no matter what I do, it's the same old ending on the same old beginning with the same old ending.
Yeah.
And we begin to kind of question why, what's at the source of this? And I love this piece that you're
Mhm.
saying, the energetic clutter. It seems to me to be a place where you say, maybe once upon a time, the ways that I conducted myself or the ways that relationships might go or my self-care, my best life, all those things were factored through what does my environment or my family of origin or maybe my culture allow me?
Mm.
But maybe I get to make some choices because I'm not 8 years old anymore. And maybe I'm 48 and I get to make some decisions of what kind of life do I want to have and who's going to be the author of it? My upbringing and my family? Or maybe I get to
Mhm.
respect and honor what was important for them in that season of my life. But what I want for my life right now that can,
Yeah.
in a way that can be maybe a very freeing question, but maybe also a wee bit scared because the devil idea,
That's right.
at least I know it, and I know it's not, and I know it's miserable, but I know how to be versus you're trying
Mhm.
to get me to step into something that can be so different and
Yeah.
so lovely, but
Mm.
it's foreign to me.
And
It's a big challenge.
triggering and uncomfortable. I mean, I think the thing is these changes, yeah, these patterns exist because we understood growing up that this is what was going to keep us safe.
That's right.
That's why these got developed to begin with.
That's right.
And realizing, oh, wait a minute, I am safe. I don't need this anymore. Perhaps it really was something that was put in place to make sure anger didn't happen at
That's
home
right.
or, yeah. And so, to start to say it and understand it intellectually first. And that's often where we begin. We just start to understand, oh, okay, that's a pattern. That's why it got developed. Okay, I understand that. Okay, I think I might want to change it this way. For example, hustling for your worth. I get I get a lot of clients that live in that place and just this sense of like I'm just going to keep doing the thing because people really seem to look up to me or really see me in
Yes.
such a positive light when I
Yeah.
do this. But I'm exhausted. I'm not feeling happy. I'm drinking. I'm losing my temper, whatever it is, and starting to do it. The emotional part has to catch up to the intellectual part. We start out kind of maybe starting to touch on some intellectual understanding of it. but starting to change it is a process. And so we talk about it, probably don't follow through with it, feel frustrated about it, try it again, try it a little bit differently. But one thing that I often talk to people is the little steps are going to be so much more achievable. So if we can identify just a little place to begin with that, that can be helpful. And so I think it's sticking with it and then finally deciding, okay, I'm going to do this one little thing a little bit differently. And what often happens in group is this celebration. And by that, I just
Yes.
mean enthusiasm for what we see the other people or anybody who's doing this starting to make this change. We see their growth, but probably before they see it. They might
Mhm.
think, oh, I did this little thing. And we can remind people, and by we, I mean myself and every other group member can say, that's huge. Do
Yes.
you know how different that is? And we can reflect that for each other as people start to navigate through this and start to make little bits of change along the way. And that helps us start to get some traction. We
Yeah.
talk about it, we recognize it, we start to feel it in our bodies as we shift it. It's uncomfortable, but then having some success with it can be very exciting.
That's such a cool piece. I know relationships can be damaging, but relationships can also be very curative. We
Mhm.
can have corrective emotional experiences that allow us to maybe challenge the old template under which we've been working and kind of explore new areas that maybe this isn't doesn't have to be my reality. Maybe it was my reality back then, but it doesn't have to be my reality for the rest of my life. And I did never
Yeah.
knew that that was even possible. I never knew that I was
Mhm.
living in what I'm living in right now. And the idea that
That's right.
I get to hold this up and I get to have new, our parents, our caregivers, they mirror to us. Little do we know it, a sense
Mm.
of who we are and what to expect in the world. But as we do this kind of group work, we have, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, other 9 people in a group mirroring for us. Hey, did you
Mhm.
see what you just did right there? You were
Yeah.
in that same situation before, you said, but here's a different ending on a very
Mhm.
familiar beginning. Did you notice that? No, I didn't even
Mhm.
see that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so you got
yeah.
all these great mirrors kind of holding this up in an encouraging way that forces us to change our paradigm and get rid of some of the clutter. Like, wow, I was expecting, but it didn't happen, did it?
Yeah. 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 It warms my heart so much when they see this in each other, like the energy is different and they give each other that kind of feedback. It's so much more powerful than it coming from me, actually. I think that the
Yes.
peer relationships, when they can highlight it to each other, that it carries a weight that is transformational. And I love not, when they're saying to each other, "Oh my gosh, do you see how far you've come? You
Right.
are so different." And they can offer that up to each other. Oh, it just, I love it.
Yeah, that's pretty well, you mentioned the word transforming and,
Mhm.
when you're working with groups and we're kind of rounding the corner of our time here, but I wanna
Mhm.
come just kinda highlight something. When you're working with groups and you're helping folks kind of unclutter their energy, those things that are limiting beliefs and behaviors and ways maybe they never even saw or appreciated before, but you get to make that more conscious and in
Mhm.
a non-judging way, be able to say, "Maybe once upon a time this worked, but maybe it's becoming limiting to
Mhm.
the very things you might wanna have, your self-care, your best life, etcetera."
Yeah.
As you begin to unclutter some of these things and the group is working the way that groups have the potential to work, what are some of the transformations you see taking place in people's lives and what are they experiencing?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've seen things like people starting to put rest into their lives on a regular
Mm,
basis, give themselves permission to slow down. And then just the energy on somebody who's done that, how different they are. There could be an intensity that they've hopped on
yes.
to sort of the group with and maybe a bit of an edge to them. Whereas when they start to take care of themselves differently, we can feel it and we can see it. So there's that. I've had people quit drinking.
Mm,
I've had people make a choice like getting a divorce, which may in some ways not sound necessarily like it's a way of taking care of yourself. But if you're
sometimes it is.
staying in a marriage that's toxic, and so sometimes somebody makes a choice like that, and we can kind of help them each step of the way. There is something for all of us, myself included, because group was what changed my life and my career early on. is kind of knowing that you've got a team behind you. Even when you're not physically with that team, you're kind of navigating your life separately, but it feels so much more supportive to know that, oh my God, I can't wait to tell them I've taken this
Yes.
step. And so there's that. I think I've had many clients who take it upon themselves to be the fixer and to overthink things and to feel like everything is on their shoulders and to really let go of that and allow themselves to have a different kind of role so it's not on all on them. And so there's a lot of letting go that happens, a lot of choosing what people want. And then again, I know I keep talking about the energy, but it's like even though we're in Zoom, we can just see how
Yes.
different they start to show up. And I love that.
That's fantastic. I would love our listeners to receive from you, Tanya, just maybe a final message of hope about the life that maybe they could experience by clearing some of this energetic clutter and maybe the power and beauty of the group process like you're talking about today. And maybe it's kind of giving them a gentle nudge of, hey, consider
Mm,
consider group being a part of your personal growth. Give us a word, would you?
yeah. A word.
Yeah, maybe
Um, a
two,
few words.
two words.
I think just the possibility of connecting to your own heart and starting to navigate your life from that place, I think, is how we live lives that light us up. They've got to be from the inside out. And so often we don't feel like that's available for us because we're so busy doing all the things we think we should be doing. And so I think to make a choice that you can actually choose differently and you can find support for that journey.
That's an awesome message. Well, Tanya, I would love our listeners to be able to follow up after our show today and learn more about you and connect with all that you're offering. How can they do so?
The easiest way to connect to me is my website, which is my name, but I offer an easier to remember URL, which is clearenergeticclutter.com. And on there, I have various things, but you can schedule a free 20-minute discovery session with me and would love to chat with anybody interested in considering how this could support them.
Very good. We're going to put that up on our site today, too, after our show. Well, Tanya, it's always nice to be with you. I so enjoyed our first time together, equally enjoying today's time. Thank you so much for coming back, being part of our clinician series here today, and just kind of deepening us in a way of understanding just the power that we have to heal, to grow, and how impactful and how lovely doing it within a group
Mhm.
process of others, kind of sojourners that kind
Mhm.
of almost become our soulmates as we begin to kind of journey through
Yeah.
our personal growth with you facilitating that process. It's been really great to be back with you. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thank you, Graham. I've loved this one as well. And it's really nice to be able to talk about these deep, important parts of living our lives.
I would agree. And we're going to look forward to having you back at some point. Thanks again for
Oh,
today.
awesome. Thank you.
I also want to thank you, our listeners, for dropping by and joining Tanya and me today. It's always great to have you with us. I want to remind you that this episode and all of our resources can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. Thanks again for being with us on the show. I will look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.